podcast. I have Arnesen on here. She is a political person that ran for governor of New Hampshire. She also was in the House of Representatives from 1984 to 1992, and also has ran for a variety of other offices such as Congress. And she also hosts an American radio show here in New Hampshire. It's the host of The Attitude on WNHN. So, Arnie, thanks so much for coming on the program. We greatly appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Right. So, Arnie, can you just tell the viewers what, we saw the New Hampshire primary just came around the bend a couple weeks back. Bernie Sanders with a huge win there. He did win there big in 2016 by 20 some odd points. What was your takeaways from the New Hampshire primary?
Well, obviously the New Hampshire primary is very different from 2016. In 2016, there was really only two choices, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And Hillary Clinton assumed she was the anointed. Hillary Clinton was kind of running on the continuation of the new Democratic policies, which are more of the sort of corporate moderate policies. And there was a tremendous amount of frustration that although people admired Barack Obama, what we knew is that he bailed out Wall Street but didn't bail out Main Street. And what we saw by the time Hillary Clinton was running was that there was a growing gap between rich and poor. And that gap was only growing at an exponential rate. And people were beginning to wonder whether there was another approach to politics in America. And maybe Hillary Clinton didn't represent that. So when Bernie decided to run as a Democrat, by the way, he did that in my house because I forced him to address that issue in 2015 of January. I've known him for 30 years. And so as a result of that, I think what happened was it was an opportunity for people to really begin to have a conversation about where the future of the Democratic Party should go. And as a result, in New Hampshire, what you saw in 2016 was that the Democrats were basically saying, we don't want to go in the new Democratic route. We don't want to basically genuflect to Wall Street and big money. We really want to look at workers. We want to look at the economy. We want to look at climate. We want to look at healthcare. And then as a result, you saw Bernie get huge numbers coming out of New Hampshire. Fast forward to what happened in 2020. Remember, we had the 2018 election. The 2018 election kind of proved that Bernie's message was beginning to resonate, not only throughout the country, but throughout the Democratic Party. And to a large extent, even though some moderates may have won, the reason why some moderate Democrats won was because the progressive Democrats challenged them in the primary, brought new voters into the voting booth, really sort of changed even what the moderates were saying. They became more progressive. And then you saw the win, and you saw what happened with Nancy Pelosi and her basically leadership role as Speaker of the House. Now let's fast forward to what happened now. Now we had a whole sort of conga line of candidates running, a lot more than are running in South Carolina, for example. And there were lots of choices. There were a lot of choices, and even before the New Hampshire primary, there were a lot of choices. And the choices were there were more progressive voices running than just Bernie Sanders. And to a large extent, those progressive voices included someone who I think was quite effective, which was Elizabeth Warren. Frankly, another progressive voice was Tom Steyer. He's considered a progressive. He may be a billionaire, but he's got a progressive message. Even Andrew Yang was considered a progressive. And yet Andrew Yang was sort of not running in sort of the normal lane. So when you begin to look at Bernie had an echo chamber, and it wasn't just him. And as a result, Bernie may have won, but to a large extent, what you actually saw was a lot of the progressive message resonated with the Democratic voters. Then you saw it happen in Nevada, where he clearly was able to resonate with workers, especially Hispanic workers. And now in South Carolina, Biden put that up as his firewall. And what you're seeing in South Carolina is that the African-American community is sort of taking their lead from Clyburn. They're taking their lead about feeling a little more secure with Joe Biden, even though I'm not sure Joe Biden will be able to handle, frankly, Donald Trump. And I'm not sure he is prepared to offer the kind of leadership we need going into the future, which is a leadership of change and risk, because what we're seeing now is a disaster, and the status quo and going back to normal, there ain't no normal.
Right. Arnie, I want to talk about this. You're from New Hampshire. I'm originally from Rhode Island, so we are close in that New England aspect to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Elizabeth Warren was a person that I thought, and maybe you disagree, should have ran in 2016. Bernie was pushing her to run hard. She didn't want to step on Hillary's toes. I thought that was her time to win and shine. The problem, I feel like, with Elizabeth Warren now, we saw she jumped into first place in the summer. She was climbing really high. She looked like she was going to be the nominee and take Bernie down and the rest of the Democratic Party there. She slowly fell. She went against Medicare for All. She's been
No, she
hitting
didn't
Bernie.
talk against Medicaid. Just stop you. Wait. First of all, let me say what I know Elizabeth, okay?
Sure.
I've been following Elizabeth. I actually interviewed Elizabeth when she and her daughter wrote a book on finances for regular people decades ago. I've admired her for a long time.
Okay.
The Elizabeth Warren I admired finally showed up in that debate just
Agreed.
before Nevada. That Elizabeth had disappeared.
Right.
Now, let me tell you, and the problem I have with that is that shows, I think she'd make a great president, but I think she lacks some political skills, to be honest with you. And political skills are important. You can't just be smart. You can't just be an effective leader. You have to be able to maneuver within a political arena. What I think she was unable to do was move within a political arena. Let me give you an example. So at the very beginning, she had, I have a plan for that. That worked. That worked. But at some point in time, what's the operative word in I have a plan for that? I.
Yeah.
What do we know about elections? We. What did Elizabeth Warren not do? And I screamed at her. I mean, I didn't talk to her, but I talked to sort of the atmosphere and the people around her. And I said, here's what Elizabeth Warren should have done. So she would go into African-American communities and everybody would say, God, she understands me. She would go into Hispanic communities and they would say, she understands me. Here's where she should have changed. It shouldn't have been these advertisements and these bumper stickers that say, I have a plan for that. It should have been African-American women, Hispanic workers listening to her talk. And here's what the ads should have said. She has a plan for me.
Yeah.
And she didn't flip it. She didn't flip it. And when she didn't flip it, she lost. What she said about Medicare for all, she is completely for Medicare for all. Bernie's full of crap. Bernie has compromised all his life. I've known Bernie. He compromised when he was a mayor. He compromised when he was in Congress. He compromised in the United States Senate. What do you think voting for the Affordable Care Act was? He voted for it. Is that the Medicare for all? No, Bernie compromised. Here's the difference. The difference is Barack Obama started by giving Republicans everything they wanted, and then they threw them under the bus and called the Affordable Care Act that they had actually written at the Heritage Foundation. It's a Republican plan, and they called it a communist plot. So the problem with compromising at the beginning is you never get to the middle. What Bernie understands is you don't compromise at the beginning, you compromise at the end. The problem with Elizabeth is that she didn't say it that way.
Right.
That's her. She believes in Medicare for all. So do I. And you know why Medicare for all is more important today? Because of coronavirus.
Yeah, I agree.
If there was ever a time for Medicare for all, you better come to Jesus on this one. This is the time you need it because everyone needs to know they can go to a doctor without insurance, without Medicaid, without Medicare, just because they feel sick.
It is scary. I agree. The coronavirus thing. I just want to bring up. Do we worry? You're a progressive also, as am I. Do you worry about all these politicians in the Democratic Party picking up the progressive mantle? That's their new code word to get people to vote for them. I'm a progressive. Everybody's a progressive, and they're not. Do you worry about that as I do?
Oh, God, yes. Oh, God, yes. It's the flavor of the month. You know, the question is it real or is it Memorex? And I think that's really what the challenge is going to be. And the challenge on that is I've said that all campaigns this year need to focus on three things. All right, remember this. They have to focus on fear, they have to focus on urgency, and they have to focus on hope. Now let's start with the fear. Coronavirus is a perfect example of fear. Let's look at what's happening to the markets. That's a perfect example of fear. Look at the gap between rich and poor. Look at the fact that people's life expectancy is going down because of opioid crisis, because of lack of hope. Everyone has fear, and their fears are legitimate. The problem is the solutions for those fears are not necessarily legitimate. Donald Trump understood because he pandered to fear. What is he offering? He's actually creating more fear, and he's not responding to it. So I think we have to start by saying whether you're in Texas, whether you're in Arkansas, whether you're in Rhode Island, that people's fears are legitimate. Now the problem is not only do we have to offer solutions to those fears, but we have to explain to people this is the time to take risks because there is the urgency of the moment. When you look at candidates who want to sort of massage and go back and talk about the fact, oh, we understand the problem, but they don't, because we are living at a precipice. And the precipice means I'm not promising you that everything I will do will fix it. What I know is going back will make it worse. And so it's the urgency piece, and then it's the hope piece. What was so interesting, I was listening to Michelle Obama from an interview she did in 2007, and she was talking about that within the African American community, what they were told over and over again is, you've got to take risks. You've got to take risks. If I were running in South Carolina today, I would look at Joe Biden and say, Joe Biden doesn't comprehend risk. That's not his skill set. His skill set is sort of massaging what is now. If that's what you were told by your African-American leaders through the civil rights moment, then why don't you think you need to do it today? Take a risk. And most of those candidates, like the Pete Buttigieg, nice guy, smart guy, but guess what? He doesn't want to take a risk. Yeah. When you take a look at a lot of these candidates, that's really going to be the challenge. Do they understand the urgency? And are they asking you to move out of your safe place? Because what you think is your safe place isn't safe anymore.
I want to go back to a couple more questions before we move on to a little bit more about New Hampshire. My thing is with Bernie, and I'm a Bernie guy. I do like Elizabeth, that, you know, and you know these people. My thing with Bernie is that when he gets up on stage, he has taken a few shots against Bloomberg, but then against Joe Biden, as you said, he hits him on the war in Iraq, but he doesn't go after him hard enough. I mean, there was so many times where Joe Biden was up on stage, and I heard this in a couple of independent media channels. He was up there and he lied about multiple things. He even said up on the debate stage that he didn't write the crime bill in the previous debate.
But he
said
did.
No.
But he
did.
I
know it, but Bernie doesn't.
But here's the problem for Bernie. He can't talk about the crime bill because he freaking voted for it.
True.
That's the problem. He is equally as vulnerable. And the only person who could say, but Joe, you wrote it, was Elizabeth.
Yeah.
He's the only one. Now, let me just remind you. Remember I told you I ran for Congress? I ran for Congress in 1996. 1996, there was the crime bill already on the table and welfare reform was on the table. Guess what? I'm running as a Democrat, and I'm running against my own president because I said the crime bill was going to warehouse too many people, and it was a bad thing for America. I ran against welfare reform because they were going to deny. Let me just remind you, the original welfare reform bill that Bill Clinton signed into law was going to deny legal immigrants the ability to access benefits, welfare benefits. So all the things we think is so horrific about Donald Trump, Bill Clinton signed it into law. So here's an Arnie Arnesen in 1996 running against who? Running against my own president because he was wrong. Today, it's like a come to Jesus. Oh, Arnie was so right. Well, guess what? I lost, they won. So here's the problem. Bernie can't attack Joe Biden. Let me tell you what I said a year and a half ago. And I got a knuckle sandwich for this. I said Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders should not run.
Right.
All right? And I said they would drag us back to the old crap. We need to move forward. I don't want to have to go backwards. I need to move forwards. Biden pulls us back, and so does Bernie. And the reason why Bernie brings us back is Bernie keeps talking about being a democratic socialist. No, he ain't. No, he ain't. If you look at the countries he's referring to, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, they don't even call themselves democratic socialists. They call themselves compassionate capitalists with a strong social safety net. That's what they call themselves. Look up the Nordic model, everyone. Google it now. Google it now. They are capitalists. Let me give you a little interesting statistic. Please share this with Bernie Sanders if you ever see him at an event. It turns out there are more billionaires per capita in his beloved Sweden than there are billionaires per capita in the United States. What does that mean? That means you can tax people, you can give them health care, you can give them an education without having them go bankrupt, you can have a strong safety net, and people can still be wildly successful. Think about that. They are capitalists in that country, but the difference is they invest in everyone, not just in the 1%. Bernie is the old story of 40 years ago. He needs to change his language. He doesn't have the capacity to do it.
But let me ask you this, Arnie. There's no one else really besides Elizabeth Warren. There's nobody else running on a progressive message in that primary.
And that's because Bernie ran. Because Bernie's ego got in the way Biden's ego got in the way. And you know what? We may end up without even a Biden or a Bernie, but not necessarily someone who will, we might find someone who will defeat Donald Trump. Donald Trump, in fact, will defeat himself. let me just say something. It's a crapshoot. It doesn't matter who we elect. Donald Trump in the end will not be because a Democrat takes him down. It'll be because Donald Trump took himself down. His corruption, his evil, his lies will have affected so many people and poisoned the economy and poisoned, frankly, the culture in this country that he will defeat himself. Now the question is, what will win? And what will win will make a difference, not just in repairing the damage Donald Trump did. We need to do more than that. We need to gallop into a challenging future. And the question then becomes, who do we have to do that? You know, people are afraid of Bernie. I just was on my Facebook page, and someone said that if a Democrat wins, they will do the same kind of corrupt thing as a Republican. That's how bad it's gotten. We just assume all politicians are defined by Donald Trump. Let me tell you, I've been a politician. I describe myself as a politician in recovery. I know a lot of great human beings that will never sell out, and they should be elected.
Well, let's talk about this. And we go back to the election. I have a few more questions. Donald Trump, and I feel this, maybe you disagree, ran as a progressive at times. He said he wanted health care for all in the 2016 campaign. He ran against the wars. He was kind of adopting the progressive message. Do you believe that's why he won in all these?
No. Donald Trump ran because he said he was going to upend government and change everything. Every time he talked, he gave a different storyline every 15 seconds. Okay? True. You could hear him say at the beginning of an event, one thing. By the end of the event, he was saying the opposite. So it wasn't really messaging, but one thing he did message. He messaged, you're angry. You don't trust the system. Government forgot you. I'm going to upend government. Now, what he was going to deliver, no one was quite sure. But they were angry enough to believe that upending government was something they wanted to do. If you were against the war, you might have heard that. If you were against, what happened in Congress, you might have heard that. So he gave a message that was tailored for whoever was angry about everything. Now, the guy next to you might be angry about something different or the exact opposite, and both of you could walk out of a rally and hear the same answer. Think about that. You could walk out and he was talking to you. No, he wasn't. The guy's a liar. The guy doesn't believe in policy. What he believes is he's the performance artist. He knows how to suck you in. And he sucked you in and he said, I'll blow it up. And you wanted that because you were so angry. Here's the problem. He didn't really tell you what he'd blow it up and replace it with. What he replaced it with is something far worse. And that is the challenge for us today. But people are still wedded to him because it's the cult of personality. They love him because they're seduced by him. He made love to their fear.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Democratic Party right now. We've talked a little bit about what's going on in the primary. Donald Trump almost won New Hampshire. We talk about that. That was like a tight margin that Hillary Clinton won that state by. What do you think Democrats need to do to win the state of New Hampshire again, because they almost lost it?
Well, first of all, this is so interesting, my state. My state has every single elected official in New Hampshire is a Democrat, but the governor. Yeah. But the governor. I mean, every member of Congress is a Democrat. The legislature is controlled by Democrats. The Senate is controlled by Democrats. We have the reason why he was charismatic and the Democrats offered a lousy candidate. So guess what? It's not just about policy, it's about politics. And what is the challenge for the Democrats in New Hampshire is about politics. The policy will go with. If you offer a weak candidate that doesn't appear to be strong enough, there may be the possibility that Trump can win. I will tell you right now, Trump will not win. And the reason why Trump will not win New Hampshire is not only are the Democrats gaining in strength, but we have a Democratic U.S. Senator named Jeanne Shaheen who's running for re-election. She has the best operation and the best Rolodex on the planet. She knows where every warm vote is, and Jeanne Shaheen will basically make sure that Donald Trump doesn't win. Is Jeanne Shaheen my favorite? No, she's kind of a moderate Democrat. But what is she? She's a comfortable Democratic shoe, okay? We all know her, and between her running, the Democrats having such control of the House and Senate, and Chris Sununu, who's our current governor, vetoed 55 bills. Every constituency group in the state has offended by him. That will hurt him, but more importantly, it will hurt Donald Trump.
Let me ask you this, a few more questions. I want to talk about this. We see that the superdelegates, it just came out in the New York Times. It was 100 superdelegates said they're trying to fix the election. We see Bloomberg dropping over almost $500 million on the airways to try to win votes. I mean, it just shows the corrupt system's not just the Republican Party, it's the Democratic Party. You talked about this when you were just speaking to me about how people don't trust government, and this is the reason why. We saw what happened in the DNC in 2016 too. Do you worry that if Bernie has the most delegates and he goes to the convention with that and the Democrats try to screw him and they put up another candidate, those Bernie voters are not going to go to like they did to Hillary Clinton last time. They're just going to sit home, and Donald Trump, I believe, will win a landslide. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's a long ways until the Democratic convention. We're right now in the middle of a pandemic. The market has tanked. Donald Trump has proven why he's not trustworthy.
Yeah.
A lot of people have to, I mean, so much can happen between now and then. What did I say at the very beginning?
Yeah.
Bernie and Elizabeth talk about Medicare for all. Let me tell you why now more than ever, that conversation is going to resonate with people. Now the problem is you've got Pete Buttigieg saying Medicare for all who want it. You've got, Michael Bloomberg basically saying God knows what. All he's doing is spending money, He, in a way, is interesting. When you actually look at his policies, you're not even sure what they are, but they sound good,
Yeah.
So I think I would not get hysterical yet. Let's play it out. Let's play out what policies end up making sense for us at the time of the convention and the time of the election. Superdelegates may be wedded to what they feel comfortable with today. They may not be so comfortable with what they're going to be when they have to go to Milwaukee. So I will challenge them. I will warn them. I will say, do justice. Show that you understand democratic institutions since you're part of the Democratic Party. But what they're saying now, I think the pressure should be on us to constantly remind them about what their responsibility is, which is to expand the base, focus on the future, and address the perils we are facing today. And if the candidate they think they want now doesn't do that, maybe they should rethink who they're voting for.
Right. Last question on politics, and I want to get into your time in the legislature quickly. Who do you think is the favorite right now? We've seen Bernie won. He won in Iowa, New Hampshire, in Nevada, South Carolina. If he ever comes close to Biden, even if he loses by 2, 3, 5 points, I think Bernie gets the win there, even with the Joe Biden win, because he was down by 30 points. And then he comes back and only loses by 5. What is your take on the state of the race, and who do you think is the favorite right now?
Well, I mean, obviously Bernie looks like the favorite, again, because Michael Bloomberg has spent so much money. And what we've seen about the effect of money is look where Tom Steyer is in South Carolina. South Carolina is kind of an interesting microcosm of what's happening. Tom Steyer may be in second, not Bernie, Tom Steyer. So we can't discount the power of money and being marketed and marketed and marketed 24/7. Michael Bloomberg, I used to teach mass communication. And what Michael Bloomberg knows is you touch people in every way, shape, or form. You touch them with their ears, you touch them with their eyes, you touch them with their taste, you touch them with their touch. He has so much money that he can basically overwhelm the system. It doesn't mean that Michael Bloomberg wins on Super Tuesday, but he does mean that he may dull the results. And by dulling those results, we can't say until after Super Tuesday the effect of his money, even on a Democratic base. Here's a base that understands there's a problem with the 1%, and yet wouldn't it be ironic, like in South Carolina, the 1% may come in second, and the 1% may come in second again, possibly, because of Bloomberg's money. I just did a radio show this morning on a conservative station. I've been doing conservative radio every Friday morning for 20 years. I'm only on for half an hour. They think I'm on every day, but that's because I've been doing it for so long. So I want people to understand what it means to be a billionaire. We use the term, but we don't understand the term because it's such a huge number. So here's what I shared on the radio show this morning. If you were earning $45,000 a year and didn't spend a dime of it and didn't get taxed on it, so you just had $45,000 and it just sat there on the table, do you know how long it would take you to get to $1 billion? 22,000 years.
Yeah.
All right? No, please hold on to this, everyone. 45,000, and you didn't spend a dime. So when Michael Bloomberg, who has $62 billion, 62, he keeps saying he works hard for it. Do you believe that? No.
No.
It's the system that helped him become so rich. And it didn't help us, it helped him.
Well, Elizabeth brought this up when she ran against Scott Brown, and I think Obama tried to bring it up in 2012 too, when they talked about wealth distribution. And Elizabeth brought this up. She said, you didn't make the roads. Other people made the roads where your goods traveled on, and it goes so on and so on. But that was the best line, I thought, what she made. And I wish she would use that line a little bit more, because that was a solid line that she used.
I think the line she should use is the statistic I just gave you. I think she should be on the debate stage and say, Michael, you say you work hard for that money. Let me tell the American people what $1 billion looks like for them. Yeah. And they know they work hard. They know they have 3 jobs. They know their wife is working. They know their kid is working. That this is not remember, in the 1970s, a manufacturing job could take care of a family of 3 or 4 on one salary. Then those jobs disappeared and salaries tanked. Then what happened? Mommy went to work. Okay, mommy went to work not because she was going to earn a lot of money, but she was going to make up for what her husband was not able to do. But that was okay. Between 2 salaries, they could still pay the mortgage, they could still take care of their kids and feed their family. You know what's happening in 2020? We need a menage a trois. We need a 3rd person to come into the family because incomes have gone flat and costs have gone up. That's why Elizabeth Warren doesn't need to just attack Bloomberg. She needs to remind the American people what's happened to their income and where it's all gone. It's gone to him. And that 45,000 for 22,000 years, that would tell people more than anything Michael Bloomberg would say. I'd love to see his response.
Well, she's really, hit him pretty hard for the first 2 debates. So hopefully she'll keep doing it, because people need to, hear about Bloomberg, that he's not, some great guy. And we could go through all the stuff that he's done. But I want to hit on your legislative experience. So through the time you were there, you were in the legislature for 8 years. Can you talk about your biggest accomplishment, and what are the differences between, I know you said it's a pretty full Democratic, a state house, state senate.
It was back then. I had never seen the Speaker's office. The Speaker of the House of Representatives had always been controlled by Republicans. Can I repeat this? I came in as a young legislator. I gave birth a week before the election. I breastfed my baby in 1984 and 1985 every day on the floor of the State House. That was 1985, everyone. Was I a feminist? No, I was poor. I couldn't afford daycare, infant care. There was no infant care. And when people said, did you get permission? I said, I got permission from my constituents, because when they voted for me, they saw I was pregnant. So they knew they were voting for 2 for the price of 1, all right? So I will tell you about my remember, this is a completely controlled Republican legislature. And in some ways, I want to defend Bernie Sanders. And the reason is they keep saying, oh, the only bills he passed were X, Y, and Z. Well, let me tell you my greatest contribution. There were 2. One was a bill I defeated, okay? I defeated a bill that dealt with the placement of an incinerator, all right? I took on the entire Republican leadership. I took on the entire lobbyists. I defeated that bill 2-1. That is my greatest accomplishment, not the passage of a bill, the killing of a bill. And let me tell you my other great accomplishment. I wrote the first ethics legislation in New Hampshire. It was killed by the Republican majority leader. And here's what he wrote when he killed my ethics bill. He said, gentlemen keep their own golf scores. We didn't need ethics. Less than a year later, Vinnie Palumbo, the Republican majority leader, went to jail. All right? I then went back to the legislature. I held up what he wrote. I held up my bill, and I said, can we talk ethics? So here's what the Republicans did. They set up a blue ribbon committee. Did they put me on it? No. But did they put on the Attorney General at the time? Yes. Did they put on a Republican state senator? Yes. Did we eventually pass ethics legislation? Yes. But can I give you a real kick in the pants? Who did I run against for governor? The Attorney General, who was on the Blue Ribbon Commission. Guess who I ran against for Congress? That state senator on the Blue Ribbon Commission. They got to talk about ethics because they were on the Blue Ribbon Commission. And the person who wrote the original bill, she was not allowed to talk about it. So if you want to know about legislation, you better talk to me.
Okay. And lastly, I wanted to ask this question about, as a candidate for governor, you supported the broad-based tax plan in New Hampshire, rejecting the pledge and supporting the establishment state-level income tax. Can you talk about that, Bill, and how that's different from other states?
So there are 2 states left in the nation that don't have an income tax or a sales tax, Alaska and New Hampshire. What does Alaska have that New Hampshire doesn't? Oil. Oil, okay? So they have resources and we do not. And so New Hampshire had a pledge that was written by Republicans back in the 1970s that said we would never pass an income tax or a sales tax. It was written by Republicans and the Republican owner of a newspaper called the Union Leader. Ever since then, Democrats and Republicans have taken the pledge. What does that mean? That means we have some of the highest, if not the highest, property taxes in the United States. Can I just share what my property taxes are in my house? $14,000.
Wow.
All right? That's about 20% of my income. All right?
That's insane.
It's insane. So, and we don't have any relief for that. So we don't have a circuit breaker or a homestead exemption. We do have a little bit of relief if you happen to be a veteran or an elderly person. And I think the relief is a couple of $100. So when you're talking thousands, no thanks. You know what I mean? So I ran for governor against the party chairman and the 5-term congressman. I was the little mommy from the North Country. I was very young. I didn't have money. But what I had was a voice. I beat the party chairman and the 5-term congressman by 2-1 in the largest voter turnout in a primary in state history. I lost the election in 1992. I got more votes than any Democrat had ever gotten in state history, not taking the pledge. And guess what? Who was running next to me? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was a new Democrat. Bill Clinton was a conservative, moderate Wall Street Democrat. He was told not to stand next to me. So if you want to know why I lost, everyone, I ran against Republicans. I ran against Democrats. How the hell do you win? And despite that, I still got more votes than any Democrat in history.